All right. Good evening and welcome to the regular Newmarket School Board meeting, July 16th, 2026 at 5:16. And we will start, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thanks. Welcome back after brief hiatus. At 5:16 also, I'll open the floor for any residents of the public who would like to speak up to 3 minutes on any items on the agenda. And I will close public comment at 5:17. Did any members of the board receive any public correspondence?
I did receive, and I'll talk about it in my superintendent report, a message from a group of abutters at the Carpenter property, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes.
All right, and any board comments or committee updates?
I have a board comment. As people who know me may already be well aware, and those who don't will soon come to know, I've made a change, a transition in my life, and I now go by the name Gwen, and I use the pronouns she and her.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did have one committee update regarding the long range planning subcommittee. I heard from Bart McDonough that the first meeting will be on August 3rd at 5 o'clock in Town Hall. And the main topic of discussion will be the town's stormwater asset management plan. So I know we had some of us that were thinking that they may be able to, depending on the day. If no one else is interested, I'm happy to go to that meeting.
What was it again?
The long range planning subcommittee.
I received that email too, and I can attend to either way. It's fine with me.
Anyone else? All right, so between
My recollection was that, wasn't it the two of you who were sort of appointed to that? And you were going to sort it out? One was the alternate, one was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll touch base.
Okay.
One of us will be there. All right. And I think that was all I had. No committee updates. All right. And being as our student rep will begin with the school year, we will move right to the superintendent report.
Well, thank you. Thank you. As I mentioned, I received some correspondence from a group of the abutters around the Carpenter property. For those who don't know, the Carpenter property is the property across the street here that we are in the process of having an engineering study done on whether it would be a feasible location for athletic fields. They wrote expressing concern about the impact on their properties in their neighborhood. Bryant, Dave Riley, and myself met with the three of the leaders of the group earlier this week, kind of gave them the broad overview of where things are at. Really what they were concerned about is at what point would they have an opportunity to give input on the project and how it moves forward. I assured them that we are on the very, very, very early stages of this. Once we get the engineering report, that will give us the idea of feasibility, and it gives us costs and things like that. The first thing that will happen is it will be shared with the board for you to take a look at. And obviously the next step would be for this board to decide what happens next. And obviously there's a range of possibilities to what could happen next. It could be, it's a highly viable project and we want to move forward on it quickly. Or it could be, this is not viable at this time for whatever reason it might be, whether it's the engineering study doesn't support it as a site or cost or whatever it might be. But I did assure them that there will be opportunity for public input. And certainly if we ever get to a place where we're moving forward on the project, it would likely be a bonded project in which there would be a warrant article that the community would be voting on. So I just want to assure anybody who has been wondering about it, because as you can imagine, social media has its way of kind of filling in the void when there's questions. Um, there's no preconceived idea of exactly what's going to happen. We are in the process of studying it. We will get some good information. And I do want to remind the board, remember that this started from the premise that we had been approached, or I had been approached by the Energy Committee in town looking for a possible solar project option. They had approached us with the notion that they wanted to put solar panels on the roofs of our schools. Unfortunately, our schools are just too old, and engineering wise, that is not an option. So that's basically off the table. And then the second thing that we had some conversation about was whether they could do like solar carports over our parking lots. And for various practical reasons, that's challenging from a snow removal standpoint and all those kind of things, in addition to the extreme cost of steel and so forth to build those kind of structures. And that led us to a conversation about, is there a place in town that might be a good site for a solar array? This town did a study on solar feasibility, and the Carpenter property and its adjoining properties that the town owns could conceivably be a site for that. And so obviously before we want to enter into a conversation about that or any other public use, by the way, I think it's important to keep in mind that the Carpenter property and the adjoining town-owned properties there are really the last available public lands close to the downtown. And so it's the kind of thing we want to really think about to make sure we're doing the right thing. It's going to get the maximum benefit to the town. I reminded the group that the town is having conversations about public facilities. There's some conversation about a new library. There's conversation about a police station. There's conversation about the town hall. But anyway, the feasibility study on the Carpenter property is step one to get information so we can have a conversation, and then we will decide what happens next. And it'll probably involve some level of collaboration with the town. Okay. Any questions or thoughts on that from the board? Okay. I just wanted to explain it because it was a great meeting, by the way.
Good.
They came with really good questions. We spent probably an hour and 15 minutes with them, just talking and answering their questions. Um, but obviously it's in all of our interests to have good relations with all our neighbors, so I think it's
Definitely.
valuable.
Thank you for the history of that too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Speaking of having good relations with their neighbors, at the elementary school, as you heard in June, the PTA has been working on trying to improve outdoor spaces at the elementary school for learning opportunities. And they had, in fact, they told us back in the winter that they had received a grant to support that project. Anyway, they are looking at some fairly low impact elements to be put around the elementary school property with the idea of trying to promote outdoor learning and just play, including an outdoor classroom space and a few other just nice elements to give kids sort of a focused place to play that goes beyond the playground. So anyway, as we started looking at things, it became important to us that we needed to make sure we understood all of our property lines and what could go where. So Dave Riley has been introducing himself to all of our neighbors, having conversations with a number of the abutters. I have to tell you, we have great neighbors. They've all gone like, "Oh, that's wonderful! That's wonderful! I think it's great you want to do that." So there has been a lot of real positive cooperation. But I did want to just mention that the PTA's outdoor committee, they're doing some fundraising. For this fall, they're hoping to install the outdoor classroom space. They have actually an Eagle Scout who's going to take it on as an Eagle Scout project, which is pretty exciting. They've asked us, in order to support the project, to provide them a shed out there to store equipment, and so we have arranged to be able to do that for them. And then they also have a few other sort of low impact elements that are like what do they call it? The mud kitchen, which is a play area, things like that. So anyway, a lot of really exciting things that they hope to unroll this fall in an attempt, along with, by the way, um, doing some PD, particularly with the second and third grade around outdoor learning. So it's some pretty cool stuff that's happening. So again, PTA is wonderful, but also the neighbors around the elementary school have proven to be just spectacular. Next thing I wanted to mention, um, we are the shop space here at the high school. As you probably recall, during the winter, you authorized the use of impact fee monies to do a renovation there to make it more of a STEAM space, science, technology. What do all the letters stand for, Patty? Again, science.
Technology, engineering, arts, and
Yeah, thank you. I knew I had a brain cramp. I knew they stood for something. Anyway, so making it more of a STEAM space, they have completed the physical work. They put in a half wall and so forth to divide it from what was the traditional shop space. And now we're waiting on delivery of all of the equipment that's going to occupy that space, including specialized tables and storage. So I hope before the end of August that we can have a board meeting where we can go and take a tour and you can see what our money bought. So pretty cool. Um, and then the last thing I wanted to mention in this report, if you've following the news, school care continues to be in the news. School care is our health provider. Learned today that Portsmouth, which was the other holdout on paying the additional assessment last year, has decided to pursue litigation with school care, similar to what Dover did. So I just want to put that out there that the question of the legality of the health assessment is being put to the court. I do want to emphasize, as I mentioned when I told you about the Dover decision that came out a couple of months ago, the court did not decide that Dover was right about their interpretation. The court decided that school care could not legally deny health care coverage to members who are under a contract. And so that was the issue. So what it meant was they couldn't leverage paying claims to force them to pay the assessment. There's no decision been made on whether the assessment itself is legal, and that will probably drag on for a long time. I just want to say that. So that's all I have for today.
Okay. I apologize before we move on to student data report. I did just want to mention that board member Swanson is an excused absence for the meeting today. It's with his family. So um, we'd like to invite Patty Wands up with good news. I heard
Yes.
you might got some insight.
You can just use the arrow keys.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. So I know I had referenced data. I want to say it was in the wintertime. And I said I'd come back to you with that spring data and then also the rest of the high school data. So it's kind of exciting news, I feel, to report. But before I do, I just wanted to speak to the education scorecard. And so this is an annual report. It's in its fourth year. It's this collaboration between the Center for Education Policy Research, Harvard University, the Educational Opportunity Project at Stanford University, and then the faculty at Dartmouth College. And basically, they issue an annual report on district level student growth in math and reading around the country. And so it was really exciting for us to see how Newmarket performed. And so between the years of 2022 to 2025, students performed in Newmarket 0.78 grade levels above the 2019 national average. So that was significant. And then that our test scores in Newmarket have been changing at a rate of a positive 0.37 grade levels or year since 2022. So when we talk about progress, not perfection, we want that trend line, going up. And that's certainly what is happening in Newmarket since 2022, which is exciting. So this is a nice little graphic that shows the trends in grades 3 to 8 for reading and math. So Newmarket is the solid blue line. And you can see in 2009, there's some steady growth going up. And then we see this decline pretty significant from 2019, so to 2021. So we knew test scores were declining pre-pandemic, but they've really continued to decrease during the pandemic and post-pandemic. So you can really see since 2022, a really steep progression up, which is exactly what we want to see. And so that's really exciting in both reading and mathematics. And so we're really happy to see that. And also, the education scorecard reports that trends in test scores may reflect changes in school quality, changes in demographics, and or changes in and out of school educational opportunities. And then a couple of other little points that I wanted to share with the board is that there are districts who are similar to Newmarket, um, that the report pulls that are the nearest matches, um, and that based on socioeconomic status, demographics, and size. And those districts are Greenland, Hooksett, Pelham, Portsmouth, and Hampstead. So I thought in October, when all of the New Hampshire SAS data is embargoed, by all the districts in the state, then I'll be able to pull from those districts. So if you remember last year, I had that chart, where is Newmarket compared to? So now I'll do a focus on those districts, and I can add some of the other ones out, like I think I had Epping, or maybe Raymond too. So I think that will be interesting comparison to see where Newmarket is. And then just lastly, I wanted to point out the state of New Hampshire ranks 18th out of 38 states in academic growth in mathematics, and the state ranks 12th out of 35 states in reading, all between 2022 and 2025. So that's pretty good for our state as well. Um, and then lastly, just on this scorecard report is they had a nice graphic of learning rate rankings. And so Newmarket ranked higher than 64% of districts nationwide in average learning rates, right back again from 2022 to 2025. So that is really significant. And in that graph there, Newmarket is the bold orange line, and the state of New Hampshire is the dotted line. So we are, clearly outperforming other districts in the state of New Hampshire. So I thought that was an important slide to share as well. Okay. Um, okay. So I've shown this slide before, which basically just shares with you in K5, our students take our diagnostic assessment in reading and mathematics in the fall, winter, and spring. And then in the spring, our grades 3 to 5 students take the New Hampshire State Assessment in reading and math. And then our grade 5 students also take the science assessment. Our middle school students in grades 6 through 8 also fall into that benchmark fall, winter, spring for reading and math. And then, of course, our 6 through 8 take the they take the reading and math New Hampshire SAS. And then our grade 8 and grade 11 students are taking the science assessment. And then lastly, at our high school range, in the fall, our 10th and 11th graders take the PSAT. And only our 11th graders take the SAT. Also, we have AP advanced placement exams too, and I'll be sharing those scores. So those are all of our assessments. So we're going to start with the elementary first. So I talked about how iReady is a diagnostic assessment, and it will range from mid to above grade level all the way to 3 or more grade levels below. So typically in kindergarten, of course, you're not going to see that because they're so young. And in first grade, you won't see 3 or more grade levels below. But what this slide shows is the tremendous growth in our mid or above grade level. To see in June that 77% of our kindergartners are mid to above grade level in reading is quite phenomenal. I mean, that is outstanding. And to think that in the fall there was 10% and to go to 77%. And I'll just focus on that mid to above grade level, first grade to go from 11% to 55%. Second grade, 9% to 42%. And I always like to highlight our second graders. Our second grade class, when they were in kindergarten, surprised us at the number of students. We weren't expecting that class to be as big as they were. And certainly a lovely class and a lovely group, but they present some challenges as well. And a lot of supports have put into place because of this particular class as we've seen them grow into second grade. And it's such a celebration to see that 42% of the students are mid to above grade level. Like, it's just an incredible celebration, and a huge kudos to our kindergarten first and second grade teachers. In third grade, 29 to 55%, and then holding strong with fourth grade from 30 to 48. And lastly, fifth grade. I mean, to see that 19% to go to 45 in grade five is it's really huge kudos to Newmarket Elementary School, and what they're doing is work. I can't say enough that we talk about teacher efficacy, improve student outcomes. So the more that teachers talk to each other, plan with each other, share assessments, share instructional practices, get into each other's classrooms, that's what they're doing at Newmarket Elementary. And it's really the teachers who deserve all the credit in the world um, for their instructional planning structures that they've put in place around reading. I'm just so incredibly proud of them and so honored to work with them. So that's the reading. I don't know if there's any questions.
I know you focused on the mid to
Oh,
above, but if you combine it with
yes.
the early on in grade level, I mean, it's even more exceptional. Like particularly kindergarten, you combine 77 and 16, 93% of our kindergartners are early on grade level or above.
Yes,
That's amazing.
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really excited about the kids. And really, if you add that spring score for early on to the mid to above, it gets you at your threes and fours for the New Hampshire SAS. It's they tell you with assessments like these in terms of their preparedness and how you might think that your students will do on your state assessment, because it's all aligned to the standards. So we're very proud of them. And then mathematics, I'll tell you that kindergarten class again, 73% proficient in math as well. But again, in the fall, that was 17%. Um, our first graders, again, really good, strong growth from 6% to 36. And I look at that second grade from um, 2% all the way up to 35. Amazing growth in third grade from 6% to 45, growth in fourth grade, 12 to 38, and fifth grade as well, 15 to 37. But fifth grade also made some nice growth when I look at the three or more grade levels below, because they had 10% and they brought that number down to 6. And I think that's what you want to see, is that number get smaller, because you're shifting to the mid to above. You want that number larger. So I feel like in the tiers anyway, it's improving. Even fourth grade to go from 9%, they held steady at 6%. Third grade saw that as well, movement from 3% to 1. And that's when we talk about interventions, we talk about multi-tiered system of support. That's what it's targeting to fill gaps for our students. So that's the math. And now we're going to move to the middle school.
I was gonna say about
Oh,
that
yes,
second grade group, just
I'm going to go back.
because I have a child in that. Not only were they a giant class and had some issues that presented in kindergarten, but then from first to second grade, they had quite a few changes um, with just structurally with the
Well, we added
dissolution
a
of the
teacher to ensure that the class sizes are smaller, pushing in, really pushing in. Reading intervention is pushing into the classroom, then pulling out. So we did. We made those challenges, structural changes to really support student learning and the classroom teachers as well.
and I think they had just some some life things that happened
Yeah,
too, and that could have, you know, this despite all of the extra things I think that were thrown at those kids,
yeah,
that
yeah.
particular class.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
It is
true. It's
exciting.
a good point. Yeah, it's um to me, you're looking at they're a strong group,
yeah,
and certainly shows that um all students can,
yeah.
and when we're all believing that and instilling that in our classrooms, that our students will rise. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Um, okay, so for middle school, held strong in reading. I think this slide shows growth, it shows progress, but it also shows there's still room for improvement and to um, have some more discussions with middle school, and we're still helping middle school out with that intervention period, that win block. What does it look like? What do interventions look like? How do we monitor the progress of our students? And we're still a work in progress there, but we have a lot of great people with positive attitudes, and to me, it can only improve. It's certainly not terrible by any means, but we might want to see a little bit more. more of the growth, the progress toward the growth.
So it's probably worth noting too that we've added a tutor interventionist for literacy
Yes.
in the middle
The
school
middle
for
school.
next year. So there
Yeah.
is a person who's
Yes,
going to be supporting our kids, particularly during the wind blocks and so forth.
exactly. Yeah. Yep. And then on to
Is that a
math.
special ed? So sorry,
Sorry?
excuse me. Is that a special ed tutor or
It
is
is a
it?
No, it's
education.
regular.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's with year two.
we always
Right.
had the special ed supports. What
Okay.
we didn't have was tools to address regular education
Right.
needs. And so you talk about strategies to, promote growth, but if you don't have people to actually
Mhm.
provide it, it's challenging. So we were able to move around some of our tutors, and we were able to create a tutor position that will support that grade level
Yeah. Right.
or those
Mm,
grade levels.
I've not seen like I've not been able to look at the iReady. I've never used iReady, and
Okay.
I'm just curious how much you can dive into like
Mm.
what are we talking about, like reading with literacy, or are we talking with literature or nonfiction? Like, or does that allow you to dive into the data
Yes.
deeply? Okay, great.
So I already, the teachers love it because the dashboard is so teacher friendly.
Okay.
So for our middle school, really from grades 2 to 8, or 3 to 8, it's you're going to see phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, comprehension for literature, and comprehension for informational text. But so if you're thinking middle school, kids are testing out of, they won't even get those questions. So iReady is an adaptive assessment, just like New Hampshire SAS. And students are expected to get 50% of the answers correct and 50% of the answers incorrect. And the reason for that is the assessment is trying to figure out, pinpoint exactly what does a student know, but where is the student going, where because they build a personalized instruction as a result of the assessment. It's also a criterion reference test. So what that means is that every question on the assessment is aligned to the grade level standard. So that's why it will say grade level. So all of the standards are banked for each grade level, and the assessment, the questions are assessing that standard. So if you get the question right, it's going to ask a little bit more difficult question. If you get that question wrong, it's going to bring it back a little bit until they find what we call like a sweet spot of where is that student's instructional level. But then it gives teachers what they can do. So you click on the student's name, it will tell you all the standards that the students have met, and then it will give recommendations. Where should we go next with the student? It also groups instructional groupings for teachers. So it will group 5 groups. And so if you click on all the kids who are in the 5, you're like, yeah. And then it gives recommendations of what you can do with this. And they do that for reading and math. It will also give scaffolded reports and scaffolded materials. So for example, I'm an 8th grade teacher. I recognize I might have some kids reading at a 5th and 6th grade reading level. But I know I'm working on, let's just say main idea. So I can get a text. They'll give me 2 forms, Form A and Form B. One form is 1 grade level below, the other form is 2 grade levels below. I can use another piece of reading for maybe my students who are above grade level. We're all accessing the grade level standard of main idea, but I'm meeting the kids where they're at with what they're reading. So iReady offers all of that, resources for teachers, which is so helpful.
And that's through teacher instruction or through using iReady on the screen?
You
The
can use it in
differentiation,
both
either way.
ways.
Great.
So the assessment is on the screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the personalized instruction, the pathway they call it, is adjusted for that student. So everyone's pathway looks different.
Yep.
If we find that a student is answering the questions really quickly and it's too easy, a teacher can move their pathway.
Mhm.
Um, that's on the screen, but the scaffolding, the resources are paper.
Great.
So I can pull that, I could tie it to a novel that I'm using,
Yeah.
which is really helpful.
Yeah.
They give really good like little mini lessons that you can tie to whatever you're doing in the classroom.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome.
Good
Uh,
question, Liz. Thank you.
did you? Okay.
That was a good question.
Oh, yeah, very good. Yes. And so now we're going to get into SAS. And I'm going to ask that you, is it okay if I stand? Okay.
Just talk loud.
I will talk really loud, but follow the colors. I tried to make them because when you follow the colors, you're following the child.
Oh, yeah.
So in 2022, this 3rd grade class was 60% proficient. Then when they were 4th graders, they were 56. Look what happens in 5th grade. They're 81% proficient. They keep steady hold at 81%. Last year, 7th grade, they did dip to 65. But that's how you can follow a cohort of students. And I think that overall, we're holding pretty steady. When I look at, um, we had talked about when the kids come to middle school, we do see that dip in assessments. What is that? And there's a lot to that. They have more teachers. They're in a new building. It's a different structure. So we need to kind of be kind to ourselves a little bit, but still have high standards as well. Um, so overall, like I didn't think that was too bad to go from 67 to 64% from seventh to eighth grade. Um, I don't have the state data yet because when it's embargoed in the fall, then I'll plop that in. I'll plop that in there. But I don't know if anybody has any questions.
But look at the fifth grade to the fifth to sixth grade show that dip that we have
Yes,
consistently seen over the years. But it went actually up 71 to
exactly.
72.
Yeah, it did. So it's really nice to see that for 2026. Yes, last year's to 72, which is really nice to see.
I think
Um,
that's where we were, really thinking, are we missing something?
yeah.
Is something getting lost in translation from fifth grade to sixth grade?
Mhm.
And perhaps some of those vertical conversations and
Yeah.
vertical planning that are happening are starting to we're starting to
Yes.
see some of the results of that.
Absolutely. I think
Of fifth and sixth grade teachers meeting more together. Yes,
and then
absolutely.
we're also seeing once they get to middle school, they're staying at a high level as well. So we're starting to see real positive
Yep.
results at the middle school level.
Yeah. So it's very good. And then math is next. Same kind of thing where you can follow the cohort. Um, you know, I guess last year there was that dip of fifth to sixth grade. But the kids, look at how they improved from sixth to seventh grade. So that was exciting to see. Even seventh grade to eighth grade, there was a nice improvement there as well. There was that dip in sixth, they rose in seventh, and even more so in eighth grade. So, um, so anyway, that's math. Okay. Now, I like to just do like a little percentile thing with the PSAT or SAT scores. So typically that 500 area is typically the average range, and EBRW is evidence-based reading and writing. And of course you have your math score and then your total scores. Okay, so let's start with PSAT. In the fall of 2025 for reading, our 10th and 11th grade students, there were a total of 119 students at Newmarket compared to the state number. And 78% of our students met or exceeded the benchmark for evidence-based reading and writing. And their score was about a 500 or 500. In math, 39% of the students met the benchmark and the math score was 471 as opposed to the state. And it's interesting because percentage wise, we outperformed the state a little bit, but I don't know, numbers wise, it maybe because there were more students across the state, it came out to 472. I don't know what the
Well,
math is there.
the scores, the raw scores
The-
get converted into those proficiency levels,
Yeah.
and exactly what the cut
It's,
is I don't
yeah.
know. So that's probably what's happening there.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is PSAT. And then SAT, we had for our juniors 63. Oh, I shouldn't say just juniors. It could have been a couple of sophomores or some seniors too, but 63 students took the SAT school day test. And 65% of them met or exceeded the benchmark. And for a reading writing score of 531. And then for mathematics, 43% of the kids met the benchmark, which is much higher than the state at 30% in math, and with a section score of 507. So both outperforming the state, which is always nice to see. And I think those scores are great. And then lastly, I want to share with you, this is a screenshot taken from the AP, our advanced placement. And so there's a nice little graph from 2022. And the first line shows the total number of AP students. So we're really hovering in that 41 to 44 students take AP exams. The number of exams, so you have 44 students in 2026, but there were 77 exams, which that's really exciting. Um, then AP scores with a score of 3 or higher, so a 3, 4, or 5, which typically colleges will accept that, a 3, 4, or 5. We had 41 students. I mean, that's like, that's just fantastic with a 3 or high score. And then so that percentage of total AP students with a score is 93.18%. So if you look at over time, I mean, talk about progress, right?
Yeah.
That trend line's really going up. So that's really, really wonderful to see.
And actually, I would point out 2 years ago, the 2024 year,
Mhm.
we were named the 10th best high school in New Hampshire by US News and World Report. And a lot of it is AP,
AP.
SAT scores. And if you look at how we did in 2024 compared to this year, we actually are better this year than we were 2 years
2
ago.
years
When
ago.
we were top 10.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to the US News and World Report
Yeah.
ranking coming out.
I know. Me too. And so this chart I made, I just went through and I just wanted to share with you, well, what are some of these AP courses that our students are taking? And then how are they faring? Um, so for example, in biology, there were 7 exams and kids did really well. So if you don't see numbers, it's because if it doesn't add up, it's they scored a 1 or a 2. Calculus AB, we had 10 students. 9 students take chemistry. 19 students take English Lit and composition. That's outstanding. 15 students with environmental science course and 14 students for statistics.
Mm.
So, and there's even more beyond that. There's US history, just like statistically wasn't a large number, but that's really proud, I think, for a small high school to have that many students. It's really says a lot. So that's our AP, and that was it. My thank you. And do you have any questions?
Oh, thank you.
That's great.
Pretty
Great.
good.
So that's
Do you-
almost 80 uh, college courses that potentially our kids don't have to pay for.
Yes.
Just-
Right.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the average tuition for a college course? Want to figure that out? Like, how about we save our community?
I know.
Well, hey,
Yeah.
It sounds like the teachers are really using that data to develop their own instruction. Do we receive the data on the PSATs and SATs to be able to dive into it?
They
or
do.
any-
The high school
do?
teachers
Okay,
receive that.
excellent.
They
Okay.
can go right in to see where our kids scoring well, where are they missing the mark, and kind of shift.
And adjust for
Yeah,
next
much like New Hampshire SAS,
Yeah,
we can look at that
great.
data and see where are the strengths and where where areas that we could change it up.
in fact, the SAT, even though there's a math and a
Yeah.
EP, what is that one?
Evidence-based reading, right?
English.
Yeah.
We used to call it the English one.
Yeah.
Anyway, that one, those 2 tests. But within each test, there are sub scores. Like you can do scientific reasoning, you
Yeah.
can do social studies, logic, and so there is an ability to see how our kids
Yeah.
are doing there, and so our teachers are presented with that information as well.
What a great way to write professional development goals for yourself, right?
Yeah.
To be like,
Right.
okay, this is where our kids are struggling.
Yeah.
This is I love that.
I
Well,
have
I
to
think-
say, we have a few high school teachers that actually read the AP exams and
Yeah.
help score. And
Oh,
they,
really?
yeah, Amy Beth Taylor's one, I believe Leslie Horn as
Yep.
well, or
Yep.
Amy Beth is English, Leslie is science biology. And they tell me that's the best professional development you can get, to be a part of that team, to read the AP exams and score and be a part of those discussions is, they
I-
said that helps them every year in teaching.
And that's not a little commitment either. It's like
No, it's
go
huge.
to like, where is it, Oklahoma or something for a week and score. It's a
Yeah.
long commitment.
It's
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
It's
I think it's just related as an educator or being in a school system. It's so easy to say like, "Oh, what's your opinion on data-driven, instruction?" Um, and we're constantly talking about test scores and the public's looking at test scores and whatnot. But I feel like this is Newmarket showing when you do it correctly and you actually use the data to drive your instruction and fill gaps and decide what it is that you're teaching. This is what happens.
Yeah, and that's the work that we're headed toward, I would say, in the PLCs. In fact, I just pulled an article from Ed Week I'm going to share with the teachers because it talked about the significance of data. Uh, the significance of data is how does it impact instruction, and how does it impact, how we teach, how students learn, how we engage students in learning. That we can look at data for that as well. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know.
Thank
Do you want me
you.
to-
Jason
I
and
always-
Patty are.
Yes, I don't think you're going too far,
So
Patty.
Oh, and Jason's gonna join.
Jason's going to come on up and join.
Yes.
AI.
What are you
Oh.
doing? Oh, it's just this other.
Or maybe we go
Yeah,
here.
just-
Oh, that's like, sir,
It's a play button.
wait, are you recording?
Jason, you having trouble with technology?
No, he has too much.
Should we be concerned?
Too much faith. I rely on these guys too much. Yeah, we'll jump right into it. So we're here tonight to speak to the proposed use of artificial intelligence policy, EHAG or EHAG, as we've been calling it. And before I get into that, I just wanted to mention back in May, we went down to Natick, Mass for the COSIN AI Leadership Summit. Went down with Patty, Bryant, Debbie Jankowski, and Chris Reeves, or Debbie Sigmund.
Yep,
Still have
our instructional
Jankowski.
technology coach.
So we went down there. It was, I think we were down there 2 nights.
Yep.
So it was 2 days. Two big takeaways. The first one was realizing we're at the very beginning and that it's okay. We're not alone. So that was kind of a relief, I
Yeah.
think. Boston school districts, they were in the same boat as us.
Worcester, Framingham, Natick, they were big Massachusetts school districts. Newmarket was the only New Hampshire school district.
Yeah.
Was it?
Only representation there. So that was relieving to know we're not alone. And then the other big takeaway too was building an initial team. Again, the 5 of us. It wasn't just IT taking on AI alone. I had some support and took some of the pressure off. So to speak to the policy, the need for one's pretty clear, right? AI is everywhere. It's not only generative AI, but it's embedded in things we probably don't even know, right? Different software we're using. So we're all using it. Our students are using it. Our staff are using it. The need for governance is there. So the goal of the policy is just to set clear expectations and for responsible use for AI. And we modeled this policy off of the School Board Association's policy. So they had a template and we tweaked it quite a bit. We did a couple things. The first big one was their policy was on generative AI. We took it a step back and just focused on artificial intelligence. Again, AI is bigger than GPT, Claude. It's everywhere. So we wanted a policy that was broad, that would cover everything, and one that we're not coming back to the school board every 2 weeks to make updates to it. So it should be one that we can grow with. So
Thanks to your definitions, I know what the difference is between generative
Right?
AI.
Yes,
That's
that was what we learned at the conference, is that make your, your definitions, your vocabulary terms visible. So that when people are using acronyms or talking about them, everyone's on the same page. So we thought that was important.
Yeah. The template we were using too also had a lot of procedures in there. We ripped all those out and really focused on the what and why in the policy. And then all the procedures, the hows are going to go into our current responsible use procedures and student handbooks, stuff that's facing parents, students, and staff. The policy, I guess some of the big things that it focuses on are verifying that what the answer AI gives you is may or may not be correct. So don't trust it. Protecting PII. Don't upload financial document or human resource document, personnel info. And that goes for staff and students. And then not replacing human decision making. It can help aid you, but we're not going to use AI here to make decisions for us. So those are some of the big ones. Again, by keeping the policy focused on policy and less procedures, we can update on the fly our procedures versus making changes to the policy. Our next steps, hopefully we'll have we are having the first read tonight. And then at the next meeting, once that's approved, we've also put together, actually, I guess, let me take a step back. Under the policy, we have a district AI use plan. So that's a requirement under the policy. And to help develop that piece where we really start talking about the details of how we're going to do all this is we created an AI task force, which what do we have? Teachers, administrators.
Represents K-12. We have teachers and administrators and
12.
We just had one more, a fifth grade teacher joined us.
All right.
Yeah.
So we have a
we're-
big
we have
diverse group.
a big diverse group. And the reason why it's so important to have the educators with us on this task force is that if we're writing procedures in the handbook, we have to have our educator voice and that it's a collaborative. And I feel like ever since Todd and I have been here, it's always been a collaborative approach of how our decisions are made. That it's not top down here, do it, but rather, hey, how can we collectively write these procedures for all of our students and for our community and for our parents. So we're excited about that.
Yeah. August 11th is our
First meeting, August 11th. I brought like a little agenda with me that we're going to talk about the EHAG policy update. We're going to define and discuss those key terms related to AI so we can have a deeper understanding of all of those terms with definitions. Of course, we'll want to schedule our future meetings and then really start the professional development planning and we might even have subcommittees from it of how this impacts our student handbooks, staff and student handbooks actually. And so with our elementary folks, we might have to do subcommittees so we can kind of divide and conquer because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. And we're just at the beginning. So it's exciting, but we're not alone again.
Right.
And
So really what you guys are looking for and the
Yes.
task force is for the board to hopefully at the next meeting approve this at the second read, because it will then trigger all of the things that you need to do to get ready. Yep.
Because we have a meeting, that was the meeting I was thinking about, that was coming before the second August
Yep.
meeting.
So there'll be,
Okay.
so we'll have the second read of this policy
Yeah.
at the next meeting.
Okay.
And if the board chooses, it would be adopted and we'd go forward.
all right. Any questions?
I really am impressed that you can keep this to 5 pages.
I think we trimmed it down. I think the other one was longer.
Because they had like the procedures and we didn't think that was appropriate to talk about discipline or,
Yeah,
you know.
no, there's so much to it that,
Yeah.
I think, getting straight to the point.
Just what it is.
Yeah.
The definitions
Yep.
piece is huge. I
They
just
really
think
help.
that there's so many acronyms in every part of education already, and now we've got this new
Yeah.
Right.
forever
Yeah.
changing thing that's gonna keep changing. And to know what it is what people are talking about when they're referring to AI.
During our policy committee last month, I felt like it was obvious that you all were playing a leadership role in the state. And I'm just so glad to have you looking at this because I think who knows where this is going. And I think a task force meeting regularly to keep addressing what teachers are seeing in the classroom and how to adjust. And yeah, it's great. Thank you.
And I think it will help us to educate just people anywhere. I mean, I know I told the story about being at Lowe's and somebody's overhearing somebody saying, "Oh, well, the teachers don't teach math anymore. They have the AI do it."
Yeah.
And not that I would want to speak,
The AI is on the internet. Yes.
on his behalf, but I just think that people really don't have any idea. Not only like all these definitions, I didn't know what most of that was either, but just that allowing AI to a certain extent, using it within the school, teachers using it, but it's not like we're not going to have robots in here teaching students math. So as you are educated and educate us on what that is, I think it helps us to be able to
Educate the
talk to
community,
people.
yeah.
It's like, oh
definitely.
no, this is what's
definitely,
happening.
Yeah. And all the reading that I do too, if anything, we want our students to be critical thinkers, to be critical consumers, and that, developing this understanding of just because you read it on AI doesn't make it true. And also understanding it does not have emotion.
While you were talking, I Googled how accurate is AI, and it says 50% to 95%, depending on which tool you use.
Did AI tell you?
Which one's the
AI.
so
So you could assume half of that is true. So
And you can ask it to be more
95%?
accurate as
it
well.
didn't say. It just said, depending
think
on
The range.
It's nothing half of 50% to 9%.
Yeah.
To your point, Lonnie, though, I think that by having a task force and educating our students, we're educating families too.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a broader.
And staff too, because
Yeah.
everybody is in different places of understanding of AI, just like with anything else. So it's important that we give everybody the same opportunity to learn about it.
Thank
Yeah, and
you.
the AI use plan has language in there about notifying parents in the community on where we're at, what we're doing. And then PD was the other big piece
Yeah.
where we know teachers not only need to be trained, or actually need to be trained on AI and the tools we're going to allow. We've also have some new filtering we're implementing. Because the other big piece was you can create your policy procedures, but how are you going to actually control that? So we have some new filtering that we're implementing. We're spinning it up over the summer. That'll give us a lot more control over all web access, but specifically AI, where we can redirect all traffic to whether we choose Gemini, whatever we decide to use. Redirect any, if someone goes to GPT, it sends them over to whatever we approved. And then we'll have visibility into actual conversations between staff and AI and students in AI if we want. But it has that capability. So, yeah.
Thank
think
you.
an important thing that you might do with that is, and I say this just based on some of the horror stories that I'm starting to hear, like in the broader, across the nation and probably across the world, I guess. But with students that maybe are depending a lot on AI to help them with their homework, to do the critical thinking for them. And so that it's human nature to go through this like cognitive offloading process, right?
Sure.
And so one thing I think that our Ready is great at helping with, but also as we get deeper and deeper into AI, we may just want to make sure we're paying extra close attention to is that cognitive offloading component. Just making sure our kids are not making it to the end of their senior year and having trouble with very basic concepts that we expect them to be good at. But
Original thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like an original thought.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or the ability
Great.
to synthesize. Like I feel like the AI response does all of that work for
Yep.
you. So yeah, I think I
And we know people are going to be using it, of course, but just those check-ins that we have to manually,
And I think it's okay to remind educators, it's okay to maybe not open the Chromebook.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Hey, we're not gonna open it today.
Yeah.
Just leave it under your chair.
Yeah.
And today we're gonna read poetry, or today we're gonna write, and yeah, we're gonna use pencil and paper, and that's okay.
And there's
And it's
that's
just like,
more than-
but sometimes we just have to give permission, be like, you know what, it's okay. You don't have to open it every day.
Yep.
and nationwide, that's a big push.
It is,
too.
yeah.
That I know just watching my grandkids, the difference between the 10-year-old and the 3-year-old was the 10-year-old was a little kind of focused on the screen, whereas the 3-year-old hadn't really taken it, hadn't
Yeah.
really held the phone. Her mother was, it was just a difference in the bringing up.
Yeah.
And I mean, she was just playing around with everything, but
Yeah.
whereas, so anyway, I think you might know what I mean, but
Yeah.
Yep.
it's I think kids nowadays parents are doing or adults are doing a good job of redirecting from the
And finding a
screen.
balance, right? We're
Yeah,
not saying throw
right,
it out, like we're not
right.
throwing the baby out with bathwater, but
Yeah,
we're finding a balanced
Yeah.
approach of using technology, but also our own thoughts
Right.
and creativity of what we
and
bring.
and
to our-
also with AI, one of the things that can be beneficial is learning how to ask the right questions. And the critical thinking and the
Yeah.
questions so that it's not generating the response you want, but or fact checking or whatever. So good job.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
And I mean, but like that takes back to us doing the unplugged and
Yeah,
the town
right.
and the tech-free days that
Yeah,
helped
Well, it's
educators and students say,
you know,
look, we can do this. We can function without it.
right. Well, and it's been interesting. I think we have just finished the first year with the cell phone ban across the state.
yeah,
And I think what's happening is research is being done a lot more. Okay, that's a good first step.
Mhm.
But if you're truly going to get kids really actively thinking and engaging in learning, more needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I think there's no question that the cell phone bans have created a more positive social climate, I guess, particularly in cafeterias and things like that. But there is no evidence that it's leading to better results
Right.
because the way we teach and learn is remaining the same.
Yeah.
So we have to start examining that as
Mhm.
well. And I think this is all part of that conversation. So it's pretty exciting.
All right, less exciting, way more
Yeah.
exciting.
I don't know. This is pretty exciting.
Legislative update.
Yeah. So I thought this is sort of a lead in because Brian is going to get up in just a minute and do a presentation on some of the financial decisions that we have to do. But I thought it would be worthwhile to just kind of do a quick overview with you of sort of some of the big things, big bills coming out of the legislature that had either been passed or not that had the potential or have the future potential to have an impact on the finances of our school district. And so some of them I just reminding you that they exist and they haven't gone away, but some of them I think it's worth taking a minute to talk about them. Obviously we largely through Kathy's efforts to track the open enrollment stuff. We've talked a lot about open enrollment over the course of this year. But just to remind you that HB 751, which was the open enrollment bill, ultimately it got pulled because the governor threatened to veto it. But it's important to people realize that the reason that that was threatened to veto was not because she was opposed to open enrollment. It was the structure and the way it was done was going to be too negatively impactful. And so she opposed it. I would assume that that may be coming back at some point. So I just want to put that out there for you to consider. Couple of bills that I think work in our favor because it's protecting the pooled insurance world and does indirectly have a financial impact on us. The veto of 1491 and 661, basically those were changing the rules for pooled coverage, which would have potentially had a negative impact. So that's a positive. The next one on the list, HB 564, that was signed into law, and that requires us to have a separate warrant article for our administrative SAU costs on the warrant. So next spring, we'll have the operating budget, and then we'll also have the SAU budget in addition to whatever other warrant articles we need to present. It's worth noting, I'll talk about HB 1300 in a minute, but one of the things that's worth keeping an eye on is that both bills, 1300 is the tax cap bill that the governor signed. Both bills have components to try to rein in administrative costs. I'll be honest with you, I do believe in right now the boogeyman of public education, at least from the standpoint of some in the legislature, is it's the wasteful central office expenditures. But what's interesting is those two laws, both signed by the governor, have two different definitions of what constitutes administrative costs. So I was mentioning to Gwen earlier that I think it's entirely likely that we have a tax cap vote in our community that's passed. It could happen based on one definition of what constitutes administrative costs. And then in the spring, when we are presenting the separate warrant for the administrative costs, it's not the same list of items. So people would be like, well, wait a minute. You said this and now you're doing this. So I just want to put that out there. Mark my words, we might get accused of a bait and switch at that point because you're basically measuring two different things. So it's worth noting. So 564 has been signed into law. That's the one for the separate warrant article. 1610, we were very pleased that one was vetoed, and that's the one that would have eliminated the retained fund balance, which leads us to the conversation we can have tonight. Because if we didn't have a retained fund balance, we wouldn't really be talking about how much to put in it. I do want to point out that again, when the governor vetoed it, her statement was, again, it was the timing of it. It wasn't, I'm opposed to this bill. It's the way you're doing it. It would have gone into effect immediately upon signing, would have impacted 95 school districts who voted to create retained fund balances. And if you phased it in over multiple years, my guess is she would have supported it. So just something to keep in mind. But anyway, for now, it's gone. As I mentioned, 1300 was signed into law yesterday. That's the tax cap That one involves really two pieces. One is a tax cap that's based upon the CPI from the Northeast region, basically restricting how much the budget can increase based on the CPI. There's, and Brian will be talking about it in a minute. There's another kind of weird, quirky component that actually makes the number even higher than the CPI. But ambiguity seems to be the rule, the norm in all of this. But there's also a component of it that also puts a cap on administrative spending. So if you adopt it, you are capping administrative spending at 6%. I do want to say, based on our look at it, we've been doing pretty well. Even if the tax cap had been in place for the last 3 or 4 years, we probably would have been okay. I just want to say that. So, because we have been doing a pretty good job of budgeting and keeping our costs reasonable. And then the last one is, which is worth noting, that HB 1807. You may recall this past year, for the first time, there were reporting requirements at the time of the vote, and we had to post the salaries of the top 4 employees of the district, cost per pupil, and data regarding standardized test scores and that kind of thing. They've expanded the requirements of that to more reporting. So now we have to report the top 10 salaries in the district and all salaries that are above $100,000. Um, um, and are there any other, can you think, Brian, is no other expansion of reporting in that, or is there? Is that?
I don't think any other expansion. We don't
Okay.
need to put it on those big posters.
Oh, that's right. They changed. Good news. Good news. We don't have to use big paper anymore. We can put it on 8.5 by 11
Oh, nice.
because I think they realized nobody looked at the paper. They looked at it online, and that's where it lived.
Talk
And
about administrative costs. That big
Yeah.
paper is
I-
way more expensive than
Yeah.
$8.
it really was. It,
I
it
love
killed
it.
it.
It
Broke
is.
the budget. So that savings alone will get us over the hump, won't it? So anyway, big takeaway from this is, obviously now that 1300 has passed, because up until yesterday we didn't know it was going to pass. With 1300, we're going to have a need to immediately shift into how are we going to educate our community about this law? Because what's going to happen in November on the general election, there will be a question about whether the Newmarket School District, and it will be the only question about the school district. And we may have a separate ballot, or it might be on the same ballot. We don't know because they haven't made the rules yet. But we will have all of our voters in town coming without any significant knowledge of the school budget, making a decision about our budget. And, which is not to say, I say that not because I'm opposed to more people being a part of the decision. It's just when you do it in the context of the school budget season, the focus is on understanding what is happening in the school district first. This is sort of a separate thing. So we are going to have to spend some time, I think, talking about how do we want to educate the community as to what the parameters of this are and what it would mean if it were passed in the community, and figure out how we can communicate it to really, and keep in mind, the November election this year is likely to be one of the biggest
Yeah.
elections. You're probably looking at 5,000 or 6,000 people voting. And in a normal school election, you're talking 1,000, 1,200. So it's a lot of people that typically are not participating for various reasons in the school election. So I just want to put that out there as something to think about. And it's going to require us really right at the beginning of school to start, like, how are we going to start messaging this?
Can I ask a really naive question? On the ballot, there's often something, depending on the question, that the town council voted and supports this, or the school board voted 5-0. This is not something that we could have on there to say,
Right now, I talked with Terry Littlefield yesterday to kind of like to get our heads around, like, now that this has been signed, what's it mean?
yeah,
And there's a training next week that the moderators and the town clerks are going to, where they will specifically be trained on what the parameters are of this bill. If there's any way for us to include information that's informative, we will try to do that. But there does exist the possibility it's going to be a standalone question with no context. In fact, I'm going to be honest with you. I think that's the reason. That's the point.
Right.
Because many of the pieces of legislation that are coming out of the legislature are openly hostile towards administrative costs of running school districts. And I think, I think it's, I that might get me in trouble, but I believe that is what is happening.
Without
So,
being clear as to what exactly entails those costs.
exactly. So we have to figure out how we can share that information. I do know that there are a number of efforts around the state to try to generally inform people. I know the NHSAA is working with Dave Cartoonin, the guy that did our videos, to develop some stuff to be able to share with the community that explains the bill or the question on the ballot. But I still think we're going to need to put information alongside of that to give people context, because I think the thing, if you're a voter with no context, is thinking, well, putting a limit on the school district's ability to spend will be a positive to you um, without any context. But the reality is that we are already actively living under the numbers that the tax cap has proposed, and having people see that even without a tax cap for the last 4 years, we have beat the benchmarks that the tax cap would have imposed upon us, and getting people to understand that. So, because it is an effort to take away local control. It really is. And I don't know. So anyway, so Bryant is here for the next.
Can I?
Go ahead.
The interesting thing about that is there's already laws on the book to say you can have you can create your own tax cap within your own community.
If
So
you
it
wanted
even
to.
overrides that. But I also want to bring up another one
Okay.
that I just heard about today. It's HB 1573, and this really went under the radar, but it's going to be something that's going to impact us because it's about student absences.
Okay.
And it is regarding student absences, which permits public and charter schools to excuse up to two absences per academic year for civic engagement or career and technical education events. And if I had if I had access to my other phone, I could give it more directly, because I was in an online discussion with the sponsor of the bill, Representative James Tebow from Franklin, and he presented this bill because he said one student in Winnisquam was given a hassle about absences to go elsewhere. But I think I looked at our our excused absence list.
Mhm.
And again, I think it's kind of redundant, but so that's gonna have to, you'll have to look that bill up,
Okay.
because I'm not explaining it very well right now, but it goes beyond what is
Yeah.
already in the in the books. But the other part of it is Senator Lang from Sanbornton put an amendment on it about manifest hardship. And this one creates an issue where if you have manifest hardship for a student and it's not agreed upon, it can go to the State Board of Education for them to decide. So that is another loss of local control.
Yes, it is, and it's not surprising that that same legislator you mentioned is also the one behind open enrollment. So it's a backdoor. You couldn't get open enrollment.
And
And so
that was exactly
backdoor way to do it.
that was exactly my that was exactly
Yeah.
my first thought.
Yeah.
But the other one was there's more behind this student absence bill than what the sponsor will tell you. So
Yeah, unfortunately, there has been a real pattern in this current legislature of slipping amendments onto unrelated things
yeah.
and having them happen. So it is important to keep tracking those. So I hadn't heard about that one, but thank you
Yeah,
for
and
raising
when I
it.
looked up the legislative hearing on that, the online, I always look at the online testimony. There were only 8 people that weighed in on this. That's how under the
Yeah.
and 8,
Well,
5 were opposed and 3 were
and I think it's how would a person know to weigh in on it
Right.
if it's a non-related amendment
Yeah.
that comes in at all? And so
Yeah.
you're actively not interested
Yeah.
in, so you have on the one hand this tax cap, because we want to have everybody have a say, but it only matters when you're trying to do something you want. Giving everybody a say on the other end is being ignored, and that's what's happening. And
So
actually,
that's it.
you reminded me of one other Erica, because one of the things I hope people realize is the amount of stuff coming out of this legislature this last session is enormous. But there's one that Erica McNeil asked me to mention to you tonight as well that kind of caught us by surprise. It's HB 1563. And what that basically does is it's under the guise of saying it's trying to help us with in special education costs. So on the surface, you think, wow, it's going to benefit us, but they have created such an enormous bureaucratic process that when Erica went through it and took a look at what it would entail compared to our situation, it's going to involve hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of more administrative time. But in the end, we're actually going to get less money, not more money. But it's related to Medicaid reimbursements. So basically, what they've done is they've created this idea that school districts can access more Medicaid reimbursements for students who are receiving services that are eligible. But there's a provision in it that requires the school district to pursue private insurers to get them to pay first. And then once you've shown that you've made a good faith effort to pursue the private insurer, then Medicaid will kick in. And so basically what it's going to do, if anybody has had any experience with dealing with a medical office and a billing, imagine having to deal with 100 medical offices and the thousands of billings over the course of the year and chasing different insurance plans and so forth. So it's created this bureaucratic nightmare that we're going to have to figure out how we deal with it. Because in the end, it might be, you know what? I don't think it's worth it. Maybe we shouldn't even pursue this. So we'll have to have that conversation once the dust is settled on it. But Erica was very concerned about it
Yeah.
because it's
Is that
a
the
lot
one
of
that
work.
goes into effect in 2029?
Yes, it goes into effect in 2029, but it is specific to Medicaid reimbursements. And basically, on the surface, it looks like, oh, wow, we could get more money. But once you start looking at it from the standpoint of what is required, the amount of human hours that are going to be involved in doing it is just, I'm sorry, a small district like ours, we'd have to hire a full-time person just to chase Medicaid billing. And it's like, well, any savings you would have had has now been thrown out the window by that. So
We could have a whole meeting about all these bills, but
Oh, I
there was
know.
another one that was passed that reduced the number of required courses for an adequate education.
Not surprising.
Yeah, that was back in the spring.
Yeah.
It made it like four courses. It took out transportation, all what they say are the extraneous things, but they did that in order to keep the state funding down to $4,500. So if they reduce what's needed, they don't have to pay for so much.
So to kind of transition to
Yeah.
Brian.
So we got to give Brian his.
Sorry.
So really what I've asked Brian to do is to kind of talk to us now that HB 1300 is a reality, to kind of talk us through what that might look like, and then help us kind of lead to making the decision we also need to make tonight, which is what are we going to do with our retained fund balance?
Okay, hello,
Welcome.
thanks. So I'll try to give you a sense of what the implications will be for this tax cap bill, both sections of it, and then I'll walk you through the options for the retained fund balance for this fiscal year. So starting with the school district local tax cap, the language in the bill definitely leaves some room for interpretation. So there'll need to be some clarifications made for definitions and the metrics that should be used for the calculations, either from the Department of Revenue or the legislature. But basically, the bill says that the amount raised by local school district taxes can't be increased by more than some sort of inflation factor plus the percentage increase in the taxable property value for new construction. So if you refer to the memo, I presented a table of the most recent 3 fiscal years for which we have a full data set to show you how the district performed benchmark against the tax cap had there been a tax cap in those years. I also calculated the theoretical tax cap for 26, 27, as well as 27, 28. And for 27, 28, that'll be a useful benchmark for when we do budget development this fall. So these calculations were my best interpretation of the language in the bill, but I had to make some assumptions. And the main ones are that the amount raised by local school district taxes, I used the net assessment as reported in the DRA MS24R report. This is the number calculated by the DRA at the very end of the year for the final tax rate. For the increase in the municipality's taxable property value attributed to new construction, I use 1.5%, but this is basically just a guess. There's I couldn't find a data point for that. And then lastly, for the inflation factor, I used the increase in the consumer price index for the Northeast region, a basket of all items measured as the annual change in March of the prior fiscal year. And that was based on the DRA's memo that they did on the bill. So if you look at the table, in 23-24, we had a percent increase in the assessed tax of 8.6%. There was quite high inflation that year at 7.3%, adding the new taxable property increase assumption of 1.5%. The tax cap would have been 8.8% that year. So that year we would have been slightly under by just a fraction of a percentage point. And then the next year, the increase in the assessed tax was 6.1%, and the tax cap would have been 5.8%. So we were slightly over. And similarly, in the next year, we would have been slightly over. Again, it's just like a fractional percentage point over. In 26, 27, the tax cap will be 4.7%. And then where it might actually come into play for 27, 28, it's 5.1%. So basically the takeaway from this analysis is that our historic budgeting has been very close to the tax cap. One of those years we were slightly below, and then two of those years we were slightly above, but we're basically right at where the tax cap would have been. So some key questions that I think require further clarification. First is, how is this taxable property value attributed to new construction calculated? I tried checking with the town, and it's unclear if they're currently disaggregating between new construction and existing properties when assessing value. So this is a pretty big unknown. The second thing is what the definition of the amount raised by local school district taxes is. There's a few different options. It could be the total appropriations. It could be what we report in the MS-27. This is sort of like an estimated tax needed to be raised. But this is important because given the timing of budget development, when voter approval happens, when the tax rate is set, and when the final tax assessment is made, it really makes the year-to-year comparisons pretty hard. I can imagine like an apples to oranges type of thing happening, or being forced to implement a budget based on an inflation rate that's 2 years old at that point. So that's another clarification. And then lastly, just a data point for the CPI to use. It can make a big difference. For example, if you take the CPI in May compared to March of this year, it increased from 3.6% in March to 5.0% in May over just a 2-month period. So that could be, a pretty substantial difference depending on what number you end up using. Any questions on the tax cap part of 1300?
I did want to just comment that regardless, we're going to be by November, we're going to be like 75% of the way done developing our budget. In fact, based on our town charter, I need to present the draft budget to them in December.
Mhm.
So the first week of December is typically when that happens. So it's important to kind of, as we're thinking about this, and one of the conversations we'll talk about later in the meeting is what do we want our budget goal to be for this year? We got to think about
Right.
that because we need to be able to, if it happens, we need to be able to either have already thought about it or be able to pivot very nimbly to develop it because we won't have time on our side.
Yeah.
Okay, so the second part of 1300 is the limitations on the central office administrative expenses. So basically, this part says that SAU expenses can't be more than 6% of the district's total appropriation minus the bond payments. Again, I had to make some assumptions in order to do sort of this demonstration. Additional guidance is needed to clarify exactly what expenses should be included and what should be excluded. But the assumptions that I made, again, based on my best interpretation of the language, is that school board legal supplies and communication expenses are included. Special education legal expenses are included. The IT director's salaries and benefits are included. Executive administration, facility, and utility expenses are excluded. And special education director and the SPED assistant salaries and benefits are excluded. It does say in the bill pretty explicitly that um, expenses for special education services, facilities, operations and maintenance, transportation, and food services are excluded. So just taking this upcoming or now the current fiscal year as an example, our appropriation was $30.9 million. If you take away the bond payment, that reduces it to $28.8 million. That would make a 6% cap on SAU expenses, $1.7 million. And our budget for 26-27 for the SAU was $1.4 million. So we have a buffer of about $314,000. That's 4.9% of the appropriation. So basically 1.1 percentage points wiggle room. So it appears we're in good shape. However, depending on sort of the inclusion exclusion criteria, for example, if we included the SPED director and the assistant into the calculation, that would pretty much bring us right up to the 6% limit. So again, these clarifications are going to be really vital. And to make things even more confusing, the other bill, 564, does not have consistent language in terms of what the SAU expenses are. So, any questions on that bit?
So many, just not for you.
Yeah.
I do want to say when Brian and this has been an interesting couple of weeks because there has been such a feverish flow of activity. Every Friday, the governor signs a bunch of things, and when Brian and I get together on Monday, like, okay, what does this mean? And so when Bryant started developing this memo, there was a lot of questions still out there. I mean, a lot of bills hadn't been passed, and so I would have to say this is what the sixth or seventh version that we just it keeps evolving, and then literally yesterday, the governor signed HB 1300, and so adjustments were made then. So I just want to thank Bryant for being able to so nimbly move through this and try to make as much sense of this as possible. I do want to emphasize, though, as he said, the specific rulemaking that will tell us exactly what it is we're supposed to do has not happened yet. This is so typical of the way the New Hampshire legislature works. In a normal world, laws would get passed well in advance, and then there would be adequate time for rule development and adequate time to process and implement. What's going to happen here is we're going to know, hopefully by September 1st, what we are working with, and then we will have to adapt. And if it's helpful to us, we'll be like, yay. But if it's not, it will mean we'll have other challenges to face. So thank you, Brian, for all the work you did this, because it has been a very challenging stretch of time.
So, Todd, and Brian, we will have legal advice on a lot of this, right?
Yes, yes,
So we're not gonna
yes.
be going through this.
We are not on our, no. Part of the problem is, in fact, I talked with a lawyer today. Part of the problem is they don't have anything to
Mhm.
go on either. What typically happens is the DRA would be the ones making the rules around what counts and so forth. And that we have a memo that was issued, what was it, like March or April, that was at the time kind of their best take on what they recommended. But we still have to wait until it actually happens.
Moving on to the retained fund balance. So our numbers are, I would say, pretty close to being final at this point in terms of the budget surplus. So we're looking at a year-on surplus of $226,000 in additional revenue. We had a lot of Medicaid reimbursements come in sort of at the last minute, which helped juice up that revenue figure a bit. And then we're expecting about 754,000 in expenditure savings. So that's basically money that we had budgeted for that we didn't end up spending. One recommendation that will need your approval today is that we'd like to pay the June invoices for the athletics field feasibility study from the fiscal year 26 budget instead of using impact fees, which was the original plan. That's about $15,000. And then in terms of the actual retained fund balance, in the memo, I present a table with your full range of options. And showing, I added a couple columns to show you what the effect on the amount of funds returned to the town to offset taxes would be, as well as the expected impact on the tax rate for each of anywhere which you can do 2.5 to 5% retained fund balance. So a bit of context. I'm sorry. Yeah. So a bit of context is that last year we returned 482,000 to the taxpayers. And then if you add 4.52% to that, which basically was our increase to the budget, that would make sort of a baseline target of $504,000. Additionally, voters approved warrant Article 6, which authorized raising 100,000 taxation to be added to the School Improvement Capital Reserve Fund. But given, we have a pretty healthy budget surplus this year, I thought it would be appropriate to add to that baseline target that $100,000. So functionally, if you apply this logic, that basically achieves the same result as if that 100,000 going into school improvement capital fund had been funded through the surplus rather than through taxation. Does that make sense? All right.
Yes.
Yeah, just for clarity, in the past, this year we made the decision tactically to have one of our warrant articles for trust funds be a raise and appropriate. Typically, what we've done is it's out of year-end fund balance, so it's not impacting the tax rate. So we did this year because we weren't sure. Remember way back when we were developing the budget, just to give you a reminder of how uncertain things can be. We felt it was better to preserve our flexibility, so we put it as a raise and appropriate. So the voters approved it. Thank you very much. But what Brian's talking about is if we increase the amount in the retained fund balance to offset, it can have the same impact. Am I explaining that right?
Yeah, so basically, if we give back at the end of the year $100,000 more to offset taxes, that basically performs the same function as if we had
Right.
raised the 100,000 through unassigned fund balance instead of through taxation.
So we're trying to basically offset that
Mhm.
because we can.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so even though you have the full range of 2.5 to 5%, I presented two scenarios in the memo. Um, Scenario one, this assumes a retained fund balance of 3%. That would result in $345,000 more being returned to taxpayers than the baseline target, and would reduce the tax rate by about 20 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. The 3% that aligns with the maximum retained fund balance permitted under the bill 1610 as it's currently written. Returning a larger share of the retained fund balance this year would help reduce the impact on taxpayers if the district is required to return the entire retained fund balance exclusively to offset taxes next year. That's basically what would have happened had the governor not vetoed the bill this year. Although we have more time to plan, so that's actually not very likely scenario.
Yeah, because just to go back to the governor's stated reason on the veto was that it would be because of the way the timeline of it would have been too impactful. So the assumption would be she left the idea that if you come back to me with the same bill, except you phase it in over multiple years, I would support it. So that's kind of what we need to think about is it's probably going to come back unless something changes in the legislature.
Right. So that scenario, the retained fund balance would be $722,000 roughly, and then 949,000 would be returned to offset the tax rate. The second scenario assumes a retained fund balance of 4.25%. That would result in 44,000 more being returned to taxpayers than the baseline target. This approach would help maintain a pretty stable tax rate and at the same time preserve flexibility to fund trusts and capital reserve accounts using the 26-27 year-end fund balance without having to raise that through taxation. This option has some risk if the district is required to return the entire retained fund balance next year to offset taxes, either through some sort of legislative mandate or if the voters don't support increasing capital reserve funds. Um, that would produce substantial tax relief in 1 year, followed by a corresponding increase in the tax rate the next year. And that's the dynamic we're trying to avoid, having these massive swings in the tax rate from year to year. Um, Again, I think that's unlikely, but I do want to flag that risk. So in that scenario, the retained fund balance would be just over $1 million, and then 648,000 will be returned to offset taxes. So just anticipating that 1610 does come around again, my recommendation is to go with scenario two, the 4.25%. We'd still be returning a substantial amount to the taxpayers, providing tax relief that's been consistent with the last several years, also exceeding the baseline target. But it also maintains sufficient reserves and that will preserve your financial flexibility. It'll allow you to consider a range of different strategies in future years, including funding existing trust funds through the year-end fund balance without having to raise through taxation, or pursuing other options authorized under what's currently in the 1610 bill, such as maintaining a 3% retained fund balance or establishing what they're calling sort of a new contingency fund that's a blanket fund, trust fund, basically. So there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding future legislation. There's inflationary pressures, particularly with rising energy and healthcare costs. And then there's declining federal grants. So I think in this environment, preserving financial flexibility, maintaining strong reserve funding is really important. And that's the main driver for why I'm recommending going with the larger retained fund balance. Happy to answer any questions about the retained fund balance.
I agree with your recommendation for scenario two because in addition, would not scenario one kind of create that spike that we're looking
It would
to
it would
avoid?
increase, yeah, it wouldn't be quite the spike that we sort of worst case scenario
Yeah.
that we were preparing for had the governor not vetoed the bill, but it would be a substantial increase from the previous couple years at least.
You kind of set a precedent, right? So they would, taxpayers would expect a little more every year.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, it's not the super extremely drastic,
Yeah.
but it's, close to $1 million, whereas I feel like we've stayed in the 500 to $600,000 range for,
Right.
or tried really to. I mean,
Mhm.
even with adjusting, Superintendent Allen and I were talking the other day about my first year in the budget being under 2% because we were like trying to be responsible with thinking about the teacher contract and wanting to be able to stay consistent with what was going back to the taxpayers. And I just feel like all that hard work, I say we, all that hard work was done. Um, I think it would make sense
Yeah.
to kind of try to keep it as long as we're able to
Mhm.
in that same area.
Yeah, I'm also, just for the record, I'm on board with scenario two. I think that makes the most sense. It gives us the most flexibility while still maintaining exactly what we not promised to do, but it obviously aimed to do for a long time. And we don't know what's coming at us for new legislation, for new changes, for new restrictions that might be placed on us. So I feel like just having the extra funding there is a good way to prevent us from maybe having to go back to taxpayers saying,
Yeah,
hey, now
yeah, I
we
was
need
just
more
thinking.
money.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things to keep in mind, if 1610, the changes to the retained fund balance come again, I would assume that it would be over a 2-year cycle. Meaning, if it was passed in the next session, we would have 2 years to adjust. And this scenario gives us that we have the maximum number of dollars we're hanging on to,
Mhm.
so we can know what that looks like. It will give you more confidence. Like when we talk about trust funds, like we want to resume funding the capital plan the way we had planned, it will give you the confidence that the money will be there regardless of what other financial challenges come our way. Because I'd love to tell you that we're done with all challenges, but don't even get me started about, once again, the federal grant programs are
Oh,
just as
yeah.
crazy as they were. They're giving us 40% upfront and promising us some later on. And it's hard to plan to spend something that you don't actually have in your hand.
Yep.
So anyway, I just want to, this scenario, in my opinion, and I think Brian has done some great work on sort of mapping this out, hanging on to more money. If you didn't do that, you would have to, I mean, the retained fund balance we have now, it didn't happen in 1 year. It was built up over 5 years.
Mm.
Okay. And if you keep less and you decide later you want to do it, it takes time to rebuild it back up. And, it, again, maximizing the flexibility you have as a board when you are faced with tough decisions next year is really what it's about.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think.
Thank
Right.
you, Brett.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. Let's back. Next up, we have a discussion for our upcoming joint town and school board meeting.
Yeah, so the agenda that's in there was one, it was shared with me from Steve Fournier. It's what the town council had come up with as things that they'd like to talk about. And certainly, looking at it, there's certainly, I would imagine there are things that you will also want to talk about there. So the town council had proposed just a general budget discussion for FY '28. Discussing capital projects that would obviously might include us talking about the athletic fields project as a possibility, things like that. And then obviously now that HB 1300 has been passed, what does that look like and what does it mean to the community? So those are the things that they proposed. And if are there any other topics people want to suggest to have, this is the August 12th joint meeting.
The one I was gonna go to last night.
Yes, yeah, you're just getting a head start, just getting a head start.
Do we know if they have goals like we do? I'm thinking about like our school board goals of trying to be more engaged in sharing the good news of the schools. And I'm just wondering if they have a similar goal, if there'd be a way to
Mhm.
bring both groups together. I mean, it feels like,
Well,
Sharing the good news should be on the agenda.
yeah.
These, because everybody's so tuned into test scores. Sharing how Newmarket is
Mhm.
faring locally and across the state.
And also if there's a joint way to work towards that, like
Mhm.
they probably have things that they want to get out
Yeah.
to the public that I don't know if there's a
Mhm.
Sure, Steve wants to join the dunk tank.
So we can certainly make that a priority in the comes, oh, it'd be too late though, it'd be after.
What's
you
that?
know.
the dunk.
The meeting is after the dunk tank, so unfortunately, that's not a
I
possibility.
do have a
Yes,
very
okay.
important question. My son was wondering if school board children get to join in the dunk tank. That was I feel like I wanted that to be record.
That's on the agenda later. We'll decide it.
All right.
So you suggested say sharing our goals and maybe asking them what their goals are. So maybe have a
And if
conversation
I'm
about
sure there's
goals.
some
and if there's
overlap.
overlap, can we work together on those? I don't know.
Yep.
Good suggestion.
One thing I thought of was I feel like we see the town at the deliberative session, but it's also very separated. I don't know if there's a way to talk about um, you know, at least have a discussion prior to that so that it doesn't feel as
Mm.
separated, at least for the people involved point of view. I don't
Yeah.
so that nobody's surprised when they see a slide that says something on either end.
We certainly, one of the things that did come out of the Charter Commission's discussions was the idea of looking for more collaborative opportunities between the school district and the town. And we could certainly put that out there as like, we'd like to have more collaborations. What are your thoughts? Something along that line, and see where we can take it. I mean, certainly we can have some ideas about that. But I do think that's what the town expected because when they passed the charter amendments, well, that's really what it was about.
I just think, you know, I don't think that we are, you know, yes, we're two separate entities, but we're not against each other. And it sometimes feels that
Mhm.
because it's so separate that it might give that impression. And just even the deliberative session, you have one group come and then they leave, and then the other group comes and they leave. Whereas maybe if they saw that we were more connected, that they would make the connection between them and say, oh, maybe this is worth me staying for this part instead of just that one. Maybe they are working together on more things than I was aware of.
Mhm.
Mhm.
August 12th.
Alright.
Oh,
So it's that, so I heard,
I have nothing else.
so I heard goals. I heard sharing good news. I heard looking for some conversation around collaboration. Anything else that beyond what's already there? Keep in mind, this is fairly hefty agenda, so I suspect it'll be like hour and a half meeting, something like that.
And then you can always have the miscellaneous.
Sounds good. All right.
Okay. Discussion of budget goals, which related.
Right. So just to give you, you have historically given us, I take that back. With the exception of 2 years ago, we had set a goal of 2% because we knew there was a big cost for the teacher contract. Historically, though, 4% has typically been the goal that the board has given to the leadership. I don't need you to lock and load on something right this minute. But I would be interested in kind of hearing your thoughts on kind of where your heads are at in terms of what the parameters might be financially, because we have our leadership retreat on August 5th, which will be when we will start talking about budget development at that point.
My gut instinct is to say that, keep it steady is
Yeah.
the way to go. I think that's what people have come to expect. It's easy to plan ahead for. And since this is sort of just like a target that, we see where we land, I think it's a good starting point.
Agreed.
So 4%, is that what I'm hearing?
I think so.
And that, based on what Brian's calculation, that would be under a tax cap as well, if that
Yeah.
were.
Thank goodness you can do the math.
Unlike some people.
Right. My favorite topic, discussion of the backyard bash. First of all, I just have to say, I am so excited. If you leave, then you might be set up for the dunk tank without no.
We are going to be assigning dunk tank
Yep.
representatives, so watch out.
I just, it makes me really, I'm so excited that in developing our goals, we also really talked about action items that would make our goals about the board and things that the board could do rather than things that the board could ask other people to do. And you know, this idea of really doing something that is maybe a little bit wild, and a little bit unexpected, but what I think would be really fun involving in the community, with the backyard bash. So I did, thank you to Ellen who did purchase a spinner.
Oh, good.
It does make a clicking sound. I'm gonna go into the SAU office at some point. I promise I won't use any paper clips or anything that's in the SAU budget. To kind of see about how many spaces are on it and whatnot. But what I was thinking, actually, I got the idea from school board member Sliga, was rather than it being about the board and people like trying to quiz them or getting people to know about us, something more, facts about New Hampshire or, you know, fourth grade math or questions that like, students would also be able to participate in, families would be able to participate in, maybe a few free throw spaces. Um, so, in my wildest dreams, it was people would come up, they would take a spin. I did take a few suggestions about whether or not we should have it be on a tabletop or standing. Said standing, I took your advice. And take a spin. If it lands on a free throw, you get to have a free throw. If it lands on fourth grade math, you get, a question out of this pile that's maybe a math question. Are you smarter than a school board member? I was thinking would be a nice title.
That's a good one.
And it really is much less, it's very inexpensive in my opinion. I think it'd be really engaging. And I really do think if we've had a goal regarding communication for quite some time in collaboration, and that's nothing against any previous boards. However, I do think that you have to like start with something that's going to get people's attention. And I think it will.
You mean not pencils?
um so that's my thought.
So you were
The
just
spinner
kidding
could
about.
be if people really felt like, dunk tank's taking it a little too far, we could use the spinner for something else, but that was where my thoughts were going.
So just so I understand, so to get the spinner that has all the categories on it,
Yeah.
person spins it, there might be a question, they answer the question. If they get the question right, they get to throw
Mhm.
out at the dunk
Oh,
tank.
so there is
So
a
the
dunk-
person, there's a
there's-
dunk tank, so there's a dunk, so yeah, this involves a commitment to potentially doing a round in the dunk tank.
I believe all my serious injuries prevent me from being.
Our space is by the contingency plan was that our space is by the faucet so that it can be filled, because I did look into how close it needs to be.
I think it's fun. I think it'll get the attention. I think it's fun. And I think it sounds like maybe you'd need two board members at a time, someone in the dunk tank and someone
Yes.
helping with the questions. So
And so if there's anybody who was like didn't
want to be in,
wasn't super
yeah.
interested or injuries prevented,
Double shift
still
on the
be
ground.
involved.
the water will be cold, so if it is a colder day and you don't have your wetsuit, I think that there would be roles for everybody, and maybe even some past board members if they're watching, if they wanted to.
I was thinking Dan Smith
Yeah.
really enjoyed
Yeah.
this, as well as Phil Mazzara. I think they might have really enjoyed it.
So
And if we really want to include the town council, we could.
Mr. Fournier, if you're watching. So I just wanted to make sure that I did not move ahead with any big parts of the idea. I figured the spinner I could use in any way possible, or we could utilize, but I didn't want to take that next step if the board was opposed.
There is no way that I could dampen your enthusiasm.
Yeah. Pun intended.
So I will move that that end this discussion and approve the idea of a spin table, a spinner and a dunking board. But just because I'm making the nomination doesn't mean I'm.
I was gonna say it has to be official. I don't think it has to be an official action item.
If you want to, it doesn't hurt.
Okay.
You can add anything you want.
All right. Okay,
Thank you for doing that work.
Yes, thank you.
I'm excited.
I feel like
yeah,
that
I
spinner
think
could be
that's-
used again
that-
for
that-
future
yes.
thing too.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
when is the backyard
Right?
bash?
Yeah.
We did have a talk about
It'll-
that, how it could be used.
August
It's
8th.
something-
August 8th.
August 8th. It's Saturday, August 8th.
Saturday, August
I
8th.
believe that's right. Do I have that right? So is it Friday, August 7th?
I think it's the 7th.
Oh, sorry, Amy.
You know me. How
For
so?
some reason I had the 8th in my head.
I think it's the 7th.
Is it?
Is
Yeah,
it-
I keep
is it
seeing
Somebody
Sat-
double check
I'm
that
double-
while we're
is it
still on.
Friday? So August 7th would be a Friday.
I think it's the 7th.
Yeah.
August 7th.
Okay. And just so Patty can go home, she's off the hook, right? She doesn't have to be in the
Yeah.
dunk tank. Okay.
According to AI, it is absolutely Friday.
That's good.
August-
Needs to
Yeah.
be watching.
From
According to
5 to
50%
9:30.
possibility of being correct. Okay. All right. Okay. Last discussion item is another exciting one.
Yep, just hires. Remember, back in June 4th, you authorized me to do the hiring over the summer, and I've
Mhm.
continued to do so. We hired Haley Clark as a third grade teacher. It's a 1-year position because we have 2 teachers on leave for next year. And then there's a whole long list of coaching positions, and I'm not going to read through them with you. All of them, this is really actually very exciting. These are all of our coaches for all of our seasons, and they're all the ones that are there are returning coaches. These are not new people. There's only 3 openings that we're looking to fill, so it's pretty exciting. We have a lot of really committed coaches, and I thank them all for coming back.
That's great.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you.
Okay. We do not have donations to acknowledge at this time.
Nope.
So I will move on to action items. I will take a motion to approve the meeting minutes from June 18th, 2026.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by board member Slager. Now using E. Second by board member Boyd. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Motion carried. Oh, thank you. 1 abstention. All right. I would I will seek a motion to pay the Verdantis invoice from June in the amount of $15,000 out of the 2026 budget rather than the impact fees.
I'll move that and make that change.
Moved by board member Boyd. A second.
I will second it.
Board member Ms. Holden. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I would seek a motion to go with the recommended scenario 2 for the retained fund balance. I want to make sure that I have my numbers correct. A retained fund balance of 4.25% as recommended.
I'll make that motion too.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 0. Okay. And lastly, seek a motion. I need the manifest. Whoever has the manifest.
I would I move to approve the manifest in the amount of $3,555,778.40.
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. And we do not have a need for non-public.
But I would like to just throw out the idea at our next meeting, we will try to have a non-public.
Yes.
Yep.
So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
Second.
And thank you for all the information,
Yeah.
Patty and Brian.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, thank
All
you.
those in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And we are adjourned at 7:10 p.m.